strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Welcome everybody, this is Bulldog back with video number 2 from this series. The first one was titled the 10-minute Geonosian Guide. Not every one of these teams can be covered in 10 minutes or less, so I've renamed them to the No Bull Guide. Yes, I'm a dad, I'm allowed to make dad jokes. So, this is for Galactic Republic, this is going to be for the Padme lead. I will cover some different characters that can be used in it, but it's all under the Padme lead for Galactic Republic. And when I say no bull, what I'm meaning is no fluff, no theatrics. This is going to be getting you as much information in as little time as possible, kind of trying to be very to the point here. This is for new players, mid-level players who are kind of just farming this team, just starting to build them. I'm going to go through mods, which can be valuable for veteran players. And then I'm going to talk about Zeta ranking and Omega ranking for those who are wanting to know which ones they need, which ones they don't, what order they should put them in on as they're building the team. And then I'm going to talk about some general guides, general tips for playing this team at the end. So veteran players can also use this as a refresher, but it's more intended for players who are just getting familiar with these squads. So again, let's jump right in here, not waste a lot of time. Let's talk about the mods. So in general, you want health mods for all of these characters. So health, protection up is based on your health. Protection up is going to be very important for this team. Lots of sources of it. It gets converted to courage, which does extra damage. So health not only increases survivability, it will increase your damage output. Again, a lot of people are confused because they think protection up is based on their protection pool. No, it's based around your health pool. So just a key thing there. Speed is nice for this team, but it's not essential. I'll talk about that more towards the end. But so you don't have to have speed, but you really do want 6-dot mods here. So when you go from 5-dot mods to 6-dot mods, health primaries get a huge boost and health secondaries get a huge boost. And that health is very, very important for this team. So 6-dot mods are very important, even if they don't actually have to be high speed mods. So again, focusing on tanks here, Kenobi is going to be your main one. You can use somebody like Clone Wars Chewie, for example. I think he's the other taunting tank. But you're going to want health and defense. So defense, you can use a defense set. Health, you definitely want for primary and secondaries. Defense, primary and secondaries aren't very good, but defensive sets are very good and are some of the most underrated sets in the game. So if you have more defense, that's going to be less damage that you get, which will be less of your protection up that attackers will actually hit through. So defensive sets do work very well. Health, you definitely want health triangle, health cross, health circle. Health circle for everybody on this squad. So I'm not going to mention that one again. The arrow, I like speed because these tanks can do a lot of damage thanks to courage. So speed can be very helpful. Health, you can use a health arrow though, especially if you have a health primary arrow that's on a defense or a health set that has a high secondary speed, plus 15, plus 20 speed. This is actually a great spot for that. So don't need to complicate things too much. You want health, you want defense. That's kind of what you want from here. So attacker, we're generally talking about Jedi Knight Anakin and Ahsoka. So you could also be using Yoda on the squad. Yoda can be either an attacker or a support or kind of a hybrid there. So he's a little bit different, but I'm mainly focusing on Jedi Knight Anakin and Ahsoka. You want damage. So damage first, health second. So again, health is big, but you're going to want either an offense or a crit damage set with a crit damage or an offense triangle. So I prefer crit damage for both of them, but a lot of times it depends on your best secondary speed stats. If you have more health secondary and speed secondary with your offense sets and offense primaries, don't be afraid to go with that. Offense does work very well. And then the second set, so offense and crit damage set will take up 4 spots. Your other 2 will be either health or critical chance, especially critical chance for Anakin, who can, on his AoE, will convert critical hits into protection up. So that is big. The arrow is kind of the same as when I discussed with the tanks, except instead of speed versus health, it's speed versus offense. If you have a high offense primary that's on either an offense or a critical damage set that has good secondary speed, this is actually a very good place to use it. So remember that Anakin can gain bonus turns, and Ahsoka is going to attack out of turn a lot. So they can both do damage without actually taking their own turns, essentially getting bonus turns or bonus attacks. So that's why I like damage a little more than speed in these cases. But speed is still good. Don't forget about speed, just to get full offense. I do prefer an offense cross, but a health cross is not a bad idea, especially if you have a good secondary. If you have good secondary offense on that can be useful. Because remember, health does get converted to courage, which does more damage. So that still is useful. So on the support mods, this is generally going to be Padme here, and it also can be R2-D2. I mentioned how Yoda can be a support. C-3PO is a support. You want speed and health. So a speed set plus a health set, speed arrow, all the health primaries. In some cases, I have added some extra damage, either for R2-D2 to kind of give that to Anakin, or Padme when we're facing Malak, because she is a good source of damage because she's immune to that fear. But generally speaking, you're adding speed, you're adding health. Very simple. Here I'm talking about generally, when I'm going over these, I'm talking about general cases. I'm not going to get into too many specifics for specific counters or that type of thing. So don't feel like you have to use these all the time. Sometimes I do make adjustments based on specific counters. But in general, this is your consideration when you're adding these mods on here. So on to the Zeta ranking. This is, when you're building this team, the top 4 Zetas, you want to count on having those. Don't try to run this team and build this team and not put those top 4 Zetas on. You are going to want them. The exact ranking could vary based on what teams you're trying to face. Sometimes they're more important than others, but they're all going to come and play at different points in time, and they are very important. Number 5 and 6 are, I would say you could consider them luxury Zetas, but they're still very good. So with Kenobi, it's going to have him taunting more, which is obviously you want your tank to taunt more, but it also does protect the team from getting hit and losing their protection up, so that they can do more damage that way. But the team is going to be very tanky because of all that protection up and the critical hit immunity and that type of thing. So even if Kenobi's not taunting as much, he still does work. The team still is very durable, so it's not a requirement, but it is a very nice one. If you're running R2-D2, Number Crunch is going to give more health, more offense. It's just going to boost the entire team. It's a very nice Zeta, and it works out very well on this team. So once we get past 6, I think they're definitely less important. Battle Meditation loses some of its luster because part of that is gaining extra turn meter and being more likely to gain that turn meter. Padme prevents turn meter gain for her allies, so you lose some of that ability there. You do still get the Foresight, which is nice, but it's not as nice as when you're using it on other squads. So C-3POs are good, but definitely not essential. Combat Analysis, a lot of people would disagree with me putting that at the bottom, but there are so many other sources of dispel on this team. They will resist almost everything anyways with their protection up. So because of that, it doesn't come into play near as much as it does on other teams. It's a very, very good Zeta overall, just not as good on this team as it is on most teams. So that's why it is at the bottom. And kind of speaking of that, moving on to the Omega rankings here. I'll take myself off the screen for a moment. Starting at the bottom, because kind of transitioning into Omegas that are good elsewhere, but are not very useful or even useless here. If you look at Yoda's basic, which I've got at number 19 there, he gains extra turn meter on his basic, which if you're running like a Jedi Knight Revan squad, that's a very, very, very good Omega. Here, Padme blocks that turn meter gain, so it's almost useless. I think he inflicts something like potency down, maybe? That might be wrong, but he inflicts a debuff that's not that useful, so it can do something, but that part is definitely not worth an Omega. So if you know you're only running Yoda on a Padme squad, don't put that Zeta on. But if you're running him elsewhere, it's definitely that Omega. It's definitely a good Omega though. And then like the Negotiator with Kenobi, that's just turn meter gain, that's useless here. So, but okay, flipping back over the top, the Omegas that you want. So if you're looking at which Omegas you can leave off, I would say the top probably 12 are the ones that I would say I really want on the squad. So kind of I would plan on using those. The top, definitely your top. So your top 6 are going to be ones that, again, you absolutely do want, no doubt about it. 7 for Anakin is going to, again, it might depend on the team that you're running. If you're trying to beat Malik, then 7 is very, very important. You definitely want that. It would actually jump up near the top if we're specifically facing Malik. And then as we work their way down, they get less important. But I still really, really like the top 12. And then that's kind of the cutoff for me, is that 12. If you're looking, okay, you're 20 Omegas. I can't put 20 Omegas on the team. I can't invest 20. I don't have that. I'm not going to be able to do that. 12 would kind of be my cutoff for leave off 13 through 20. If you're looking for places to leave it off. And then now a lot of these, remember, I've listed Yoda, R2D2, C3PO. You're not using all of those characters, or at least generally. There's usually one that you've got set aside to run for this team. All of them work well, but it's not a 7-man team, so it's not as many Omegas as it looks like. I'm just including the characters that are kind of most important there. So I don't want to harp on this too much, but a lot of people like this Omega ranking to kind of give you an idea of what order to put them in and which ones you can skip. So I wanted to kind of talk about the cutoff there. So on to general tips. Now, tips are hard because this team can be run several different ways, and it can be based on the team that you're facing. I'm not going to go over like this is how you counter Darth Revan. This is how you counter General Grievous. And you have to look at another video for that. I want to keep everything general here. Keep it kind of simple, and I don't want to go too in depth into that. But do know my second point here: you can run both fast and slow versions. If you can outspeed your opponent, then by all means outspeed your opponent. Put lots of speed on it. That's a very good way to run things. But if you don't have speed, or you want to use that speed someplace else, like in Grand Arena, if you don't have enough speed to give to everybody and you're looking for teams that you can cut speed from, you do want 6-dot mods still, as I talked about, but you can cut speed from this team, and you can run slower versions. Let your opponents put all sorts of debuffs on you, and then use Padme to flip those into protection up and turn the match around. So slow versions definitely do work. What I do like to do is bunch speeds together, though. So this is not a requirement, but it is something that I like. So especially if you have, well, I mean, I guess either way, but if you have Padme going first, for example, and you have Padme grant the whole team protection up, if the opponent then takes a bunch of turns, they can dispel that protection up, just do damage to hit through it, that type of thing, and then by the time your other characters are going, they've lost their protection up, so it doesn't get converted to courage, they don't do extra damage. But if you had, like, for example, Padme at speed 270, and then Anakin at speed 269, and then Ahsoka at speed 268, they all go back to back, so you get all that protection up, and then your allies immediately take turns, convert their protection up into courage, and do tons of damage. And I like being able to do that. That's going to increase the damage output, or has the potential to increase the damage output significantly. So I don't think the exact turn orders necessarily matter all the time. They can matter if you're doing specific counters, but as in general, putting this team together, the turn order doesn't have to be a specific way. I would either, again, if you're just prepping for Grand Arena and wanting to run this against a variety of teams or running an arena, I do like Padme going first and being fast, but it's not a requirement. So moving past that, do remember there's no turn meter gain. This can be very important if we're looking at like Yoda, who has various ways to gain lots of turn meter. A lot of times I'll use his basic attack over his special attack because the basic gains turn meter. You're not doing that on this team because he doesn't get that turn meter. So just don't forget about that. Non-attack specials. A lot of times when you're using a non-attack, looking at Yoda again, when he's using his battle meditation that grants all these buffs and shares them. A lot of times you're not focused on who you're actually targeting, but do remember that if you've got Ahsoka on this team, which you probably do, she is going to assist. So unless she is like dazed or fractured or something like that, she will assist. So be mindful of who you're targeting. Usually you want to target buffed enemies because Ahsoka will dispel on her basic. She will also hit through Foresight and dispel Foresight. So pay attention to who you're targeting there. It doesn't always have to be a buffed enemy. If she's got stacks of courage and you're wanting her to do some damage or finish off somebody, you can do it that way. But the point is, make sure you actually pay attention to who you're targeting, even if you're not doing a traditional attack, because Ahsoka still attacks. Okay, protection up. I want to explain how protection up stacks a little bit, because it's not necessarily intuitive. So protection up stacks as long as it's from different abilities. It refreshes if it's coming from the same ability. So let's talk about Padme, for example. Padme uses her special, grants everybody protection up. Then let's say she gets called to assist, or just uses her basic attack in some form, which grants protection up. That will stack with the protection up that she's already granted from her special. But if she uses a basic again, it's not going to stack again. It's going to refresh the protection that she got from her basic. So if when I say refresh, it will, let's say somebody took some damage and their stacks of protection went down. When you refresh, it will restore those protection up to whatever number it is for that attack. But you're not going to stack tons of protection up from using the same ability over and over. So if Padme gets called 3 times in consecutive turns and uses her basic, she's not going to stack that protection up 3 times. So I know that's as clear as mud, and I'm not great at explaining those types of things, but hopefully that's at least somewhat clear. Again, if you're using protection up from different abilities, they will stack. If it comes from the same ability, it just refreshes. And then the other thing that's not necessarily intuitive, it kind of actually surprised me that the game was smart enough to do this, is that courage is not wasted. So if you have a character that has, an opponent that has 30% health, but your character has 25 stacks of courage, when you attack, you're not going to use all of those stacks of courage. You'll just use the 5 that you need to finish off the character. The rest you can save and use on your next turn. So a lot of times that doesn't actually come into play as far as how you're playing, but in some cases it can. Don't be afraid to attack a weaker target if it's a high value target, and don't worry about wasting the stacks of courage. Those will come back around. You can use them for the next turn. So a lot of times you do want to, if you've got a tons of stacks of courage, take out an opponent that is fully healthy, so you can get a bigger hit. But you don't always have to do it that way. So just something that you can think about. So that's about all I have for general tips. Again, there's a lot more we could come over, but I don't want to make this a 30-minute, hour-long video going over all the different types of counters. I want this to be a basic how to set up and kind of how to play this Padme lead Galactic Republic squad. I'm starting to run out of breath here. So that's basically all I've got for this. Let me know. Again, this is only the second one I've done of these. So let me know what you think of it, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see. Or if you have questions about what I said here, feel free to leave comments, talk to me on Discord, Twitter, whatever. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help anybody that reaches out. And let me know what questions you have, what you thought of this. I'm planning on doing a lot more of these. My first one didn't get a ton of views, but it got a lot of positive feedback, so I know there's a lot of people that these are helping that like to see these. I even heard some veteran players that maybe use these teams all the time, but actually did learn something about mods. So that's that. I love hearing that when there's veteran players that actually learn stuff from this guide. That means I know I'm doing something right in there and actually teaching about it. So that's good to hear. So be sure to like, subscribe, all that stuff. And then excuse me. Like I said, running out of breath. I'm not used to talking this fast this often. I know I didn't speak that fast, but let me know what you think, and I'll be seeing you guys around. So have a great night. See you around the holotables.